Welcome to the EntrePastors podcast on YouTube. This is a show that helps pastors think, act, and thrive as prosperous entrepreneurs. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the EntrePastors podcast on YouTube. This is episode number 48, and in this episode, you're going to hear myself and my co-host Les Hughes talking about 3 mindset shifts that pastors need to embrace. And there's kind of a caveat to this, and that is if they desire to succeed financially. Hey, listen, if you're a pastor and you are okay with struggling financially, living paycheck to paycheck, if you have bought into the myth that that is somehow God's will for pastoring, or that being a good servant of the Lord means that you're just going to do without and struggle financially, then you're not going to be interested in what we have to say. And so just keep enjoying the struggle, I guess. But for me, I have come to fully reject that notion that simply because I chose to be obedient to the Lord in pastoral ministry means that I'm going to just suffer financially and not do well. What I've come to learn is that that is not God's word for me. That might be expectations of other people, but I changed my thinking, and it's amazing that after my thought process changed, so did the results that I was experiencing in life and ministry and in the marketplace. So anyway, we've got a great conversation coming your way as we continue to talk about this pastor's roadmap to financial freedom. We're going to really unpack some mindset stuff in this episode. So without any further ado, check out this interview that I did recently with my co-host, Les Hughes. All right. Well, hey, we've got a good show lined up. At least I think it's going to be a good show. We are titling episode number 48, 3 Mindset Shifts Pastors Need to Embrace. Now, there's kind of an explanational tagline behind it that I'm not going to put out forward facing because it's just too many words. But here's the if they want to win financially. So Les, in our time together, we're going to unpack 3 major mindset shifts that we think pastors need to embrace if they are kind of sick and tired of what has become very normal in ministry. And that's financially struggling, living paycheck to paycheck, not doing very well, not really putting much aside for the future. So if you're good with that, pastor, if you like that and that's a comfortable place for you to be, then by all means, you don't want to listen to what we're getting ready to say. You keep thinking the way you've been thinking. But if you're ready to experience a different result, we hope to help you. And we're going to talk about that as we label these 3 mindset shifts. So Les, let me start with this question before we start getting into those. I'm just thinking, I'm going to put myself, can I play devil's advocate for a minute? Even though
feel free. Yeah, go right ahead.
Okay, so I can already hear the critic out there who says, seriously, this sounds like such a woo-woo thing, positive thinking. It's just, humanistic psychology packaged up, and does it really matter what my mindset is? So I just want you to speak to that, Les. Does it matter what we think about? And if so, why? And why have we given an entire module of our brand new pastor's roadmap to financial freedom that we unleashed last week? Why have we dedicated an entire module to mindset in there?
Great question. And I can say without hesitation, Jon, that the most important thing about a person is what they think. It's the most important thing when it comes to our relationship with God. That's why the Old Testament says, as a man thinks within himself, or as a man thinks in his heart, so is he.
Yeah.
So the proverb is absolutely true. That's why the Apostle Paul spends so much time on having the mind of Christ. That's why Jesus himself said that when he told us how to love God, one of the ways he said to do that was with all of our mind. So if you think about it, what happens in my family starts with what I think. What happens in my ministry and church life, it all starts with my mind. I've got to think it before I'm going to dwell on it and then do it. So what happens in every aspect of life starts with our thinking. And that's why our thinking, or our mindset, it really is the most important thing about us in those related areas.
Yeah. Yeah, that's well said, because I know there's some of us, especially guys, right? I'm going to paint with a broad brush, speaking for a lot of men. Like, many of us are wired in such a way, it's like, just cut to the chase, man. Give me the formula, give me the 2 steps, give me the 7 steps. What do I need to do to get there and to have different results? And we'll get to that, because there are some things we need to do, but the doing, before the doing, is the thinking. Because if we don't get our thinking squared away, those old thinking habits and patterns will take us right back to the same stuff we've always been getting.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. Well, good. Let's jump right into this, Les. It's kind of late in the day that you and I are recording this, and I know you're just about out of words. Your word meter's running low, man. So we gotta.
That's okay. This fires me up right here. I'm good. Get my second win.
All right. Well, I'm happy to do the heavy lifting. So if you need me to just yap, you like hold up your hand or something, and I'll just roll with it. But let's jump into these 3 mindset shifts that we believe pastors need to embrace if they want to break out of the old crusty way and and experience something new and win financially. So the first one that we've labeled, Les, is simply this: I need to be open to new and innovative models of what ministry can look like. I'll say one thing and then I'll turn it over to you. For so long, for many of us in the Western part of the world, in the church in the United States, especially the evangelical, kind of conservative church, we have a very rigid idea of what it looks like to be in ministry. Even though we all think we're doing these really unique things and our church is different, man, you walk into any church and on a Sunday, and I can tell you they're going to have some announcements and an offering and a sermon and some songs, and it's really not that different. And that goes beyond Sunday morning out into the rest of what pastoring has been. There's just this very rigid model of what it means to be in ministry. So why is this a mindset shift that's needed if someone's going to win financially? How would you explain that?
Well, because we just paint ourselves into a corner and in some ways really put God in a box when we presume that the way that we're doing it or the way that we're comfortable in doing it is just the only way or even the best way, Jon. I mean, I don't even know who it was years ago, but that said this, but it was some of the best advice I ever received. And that was to be a lifelong learner. And man, I know that there are so many more things that I still can learn, about everything. A few years ago, I heard a kind of a leader and somebody that was pretty sharp and innovative, but who was an evangelical, talk about the message and how the message doesn't change, but the methods do. And I won't go into all of the example or the metaphor that he used, but it was basically of he had a little toddler that that when he drank his milk, he had it in his favorite little cup that he carried around with him in the house. But when this man said, when I go to bed and I have a glass of milk before bedtime, I've got my favorite glass that I have that glass of milk just about every time, but it's the same stuff. It's the same milk. And our message doesn't change, but the methods do. And what it looks like does. And man, as a culture, even in North America, church world is looking very, very different.
Yeah.
And I think what happens sometimes, Jon, is that we almost assign moral value to money. And it's just a tool. It's not good. It's not evil. It just is. And there's a lot of mindset stuff that goes along with that, but we got to get away from this idea that money's either good or bad. And if you got a lot, it means one thing. If you don't have very much, it needs something else. We got to get past all of that. It's just a tool.
Yeah. Well, we'll come back to that here in just a moment, because that's leading into the next thing I want to talk about. But I want to stay with the model thing for just a minute. I've heard that phrase too before a lot. Kind of growing up in the church, that our message doesn't change, but our methods do, and we all kind of applaud that and we get it. But usually, then all that means is someone's bringing a drum set into the church, or we're getting an LCD projector or something. Yeah. And it's a minor tweak, and so that's such a good statement. It is really true. But I'm saying it is time for pastors to lean into that, like the methodology of how we have been doing church and how we have been approaching what it looks like to be a pastor. It is changing. It must change. And your thinking around that has to change if you're going to be in a position to thrive financially. Because here's what I can tell you. I'm painting with a broad brush. I understand there's maybe some exceptions to this, but by and large, the average pastor in the North American church has not done well financially ever, like as a result of pastoral ministry. Like, pastoral ministry is not what you choose to go into to do well financially. And we all know that. We all accept it. We all have jokes about it. God, you keep him humble, we'll keep him poor, all of that. And I'm just done with that. I'm done with that narrative. And in order for a pastor to break away from that, they're going to have to recognize, look, I can't be sitting in my church office for 60 hours a week trying to jump through the endless hoops and expectations of other people doing the work of the ministry, when really I haven't been called to do the work of the ministry. I've been called to equip the body to do the work of the ministry. And I'm going to stay in here for a really mediocre, below average salary. That model's not going to do it. So if you want to experience some financial success and freedom, we're going to have to think differently about what your role as a pastor looks like, and what it looks like in terms of a time commitment for you to be in the office and all of that. So that's really where we're going with this. And the minute you start thinking down that road, you'll find those internal barriers start to come up real quick, because it's like, well, yeah, but what about this person? What are they going to say? What's my board going to say? What's my grandma going to say? Whatever. So
yeah, and if I could, I want to speak to the guy that is that's at a large church setting, okay? And maybe, was encouraged to listen to this podcast from someone, but frankly, he's just not interested. He doesn't have the bandwidth and all the good, and that doesn't, frankly, maybe not even need the extra income. He's doing pretty well. He's got the 401k and he's getting a raise. The trajectory, his church is growing and all that. Man, that is awesome. And I have been there, and Jon, you have been there. And so you may be even at a place, you're multi-campus. You've got about 100 staff members. You've got campus pastors. And even if you wanted to do something else, it kind of sounds like it might be fun, but there's so many hours in a day and you choose not to. Man, that's fine. But let me just speak some truth into you and just take it for what it's worth. Your circumstances can change. I have been there. Yep. And I'm telling you, your circumstances can change. And it's just wise to be building a plan, perhaps, maybe not even for your current setting. I know I've got a good friend, Jon, that's pastor of a church just like I described, but now he is in his mid 50s or so. He knows that pace, there's a time that pace has got to change a little bit. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And then there comes a time that a church is ready for another voice. Yep. A new voice and a new vision. Doesn't mean the former was bad. It's just God's going to do something. He's going to do something new. And when that time comes, it's pretty sad, Jon, really, to look around and people don't need you like they used to. And you need a new challenge, and you've still got a message. You still have the heart of a pastor or the heart of a missionary or evangelist or teacher or whatever. Then why don't you just be open to being a lifelong learner, learning some new models, learning some new skills. And then when that time comes to make the transition, it's a natural one, because you haven't put, so to use a cliche, all your eggs in one basket, even though it's an awesome basket.
Yeah.
When you're ready, when you want to hear this message, we'll be here for you.
That's good, man. And I want to say this, all joking aside, because there are pastors out there like you just described, Les, and you have been in that setting, but I would contend that's a small percentage of normal pastors.
Very small.
And you kindly lumped me into that. But bro, when I was in the thick of the trenches, I wasn't experiencing success on a financial level. Our church was growing and I was making an okay-ish salary, but not in comparison to some, CEO of a 6, campus location or whatever. Anyway, and there's probably, for every one of those pastors that you just described, there's probably 9 or 10 in the other camp going, I've never known what that is.
More than that's right.
What's this 401k you speak of? So, and again, so I'm not making light of what you said. That's kind of what I love about our partnership, Les, is that we kind of both bring a little bit different experience in pastoral ministry, because you have been in some of those realms that, by the way, many of us on the 95% would look up to and go, man, if I could ever get to that level. And you're here to tell them, look, bro, I've been to that level and it's not all that you think it is.
I'm glad you said that. That's exactly what I was thinking. So for the person that sees themselves at a level under that, and that's your goal, that's fine. If that's what God calls you to do, that's fine. But man, I'm telling you, it's just not wise to entrust your current and professional status and your financial future to potentially a very small handful of people sitting around a conference table. That's all I'm saying.
Yep. So good. One last thing I want to say about models, and then we'll move on. I almost don't like the word model, even though I was the one that wrote it in our notes and, called it out. But here's why, because when we use the word model, it immediately assumes that, well, now there's something for me to look at and copy. And I think that's been a huge problem in the church. It's one of the things that's gotten us to where we are, is that we've all just been copying off of copies. And we're losing probably a lot of what this creative individuality that could be there if pastors created their own model. So here's what I'm trying to say with this, Les. I'm not doing a good job of articulating it, but stop worrying about if the way you're doing it looks like the way everyone else is doing it. If you have to run a business or 2 or 3 businesses in addition to being a pastor, and you're finding little pockets of time around those businesses to build a sermon and minister to people, that's your model. And other people can look at that. It may not work for them, that God hasn't called them to your model or to your story. So you lean into what's uniquely you. That's kind of what we're talking about here, with having a mindset that's willing to innovate and willing to be open to, what if the way I pastor doesn't look like the way Les pastors, or how John used to do it, or whatever, So that's all I want to say to that. Let's move on to the second one. And I had to hold you back a minute ago. You ready to go, Les? You ready to hit this one? And it's this. Yeah. I need to turn up my financial thermostat. So there are pastors that have and I was one of them. I simply accepted this narrative that said, I'm not going to make any money. I'm okay with that. I'm going to choose a path in life where I'm not going to do very well financially, because that's what I was told and modeled and shown. This is what pastoring looks like. You won't get rich being a pastor. I want to first just say that's okay to recognize that. No, I don't. I would run from someone who wanted to be a pastor so they could be rich. Like, I think there's something healthy about that, but I also think there's a sinister side of that it just automatically sets us up for having such low expectations for what could be possible if we just got a little creative, if we leaned into how God made us and looked for opportunities around us. And it has limited us. It has put a real lid on top of so many pastors to where they don't even then explore financial literacy. They don't really go into that world of understanding how money is created and how it works and how to build wealth and build assets, because they simply have this lid, this ceiling upon them. Because I'm a pastor, I'm not going to do well financially. I'm going to have a very below average salary and get very below average results. So if you want to break out of that, we got to turn up the thermostat. And so let's run with that. How do you do that? What does that look like?
For one thing, here's the reality. Everybody listening to this right now, I'll go ahead and settle one thing, bro. You are rich already. Compare if you're concerned about what people will say or how they'll feel about you. And here's some symptoms. Let me give you some signals. Okay. Here are some red flags. If you feel like you've got to explain to people the great deal you got on your car when you got it, or the nice house that you purchased, but it's okay because it was in foreclosure, or it was a fixer upper, or you got a new computer. Well, it's okay because the other one was still using, floppy disk or whatever. Or you got, you know what I mean, John?
I mean, what you're talking about.
You got some nice threads, but hey, somebody gave them to you. You got them at the thrift store. I mean, come on, man. Here's the reality of it. Compared to the vast majority of people in this world, you are rich. If you don't go to bed hungry, if you have clothes to wear, you got a car, you got to be kidding me. You got a house to live in. You are rich. Here's the definition of rich that somebody told me a long time ago. And it's not Webster's, but I love it. If you've got everything you need and you still have enough to give away to somebody else, man, you are rich. And so it's not a matter of how, there's no amount, there's no sum. If you've got those needs met, and let's just be honest and say we all do, and we can afford to give away a little bit, man, you are rich. And that doesn't even count the intangibles, John. I remember coming out of it was the agricultural museum, okay, just outside of Jackson, Mississippi. And I was pastoring a little bitty church, and my sweet wife was next to me, and we had 2 kids at the time, and I was pushing the stroller, and it was the Jim Buck Ross Museum, all right, agricultural museum in Jackson, Mississippi. And as we were coming in, the man himself, Jim Buck Ross, was coming out, okay, that it was named after. Great big, tall 10-gallon hat, like if anybody remembers Hoss on Bonanza, the big old hat. He walks out, and I recognized him, but he didn't know me from Adam. But he looked at me, and he looked at my family, and my parents were also walking with us. And he looked me in the eyes, and he said, "Young man, you're a rich man." And I was probably 27 or so ish, 28, something like that. And my chest stuck out, John. And he was telling the truth, man. I really was rich. So all that stuff, it's just stuff. That's all it is. It's just stuff. Enjoy it. Have fun with it. I'm paraphrasing, but is it Jane? I should have looked at it before the podcast, but I just thought of it. Then 1st or 2nd Timothy, when Paul is talking about God giving us good things for us to enjoy.
Yeah, let those who are rich in this present world, not to be content, and be willing to share. I'm paraphrasing too. This is horrible. 2 pastors don't even know what it says, but I'm going from memory,
going off
right?
the cuff, yeah.
But yeah, it says right in there that God has
for us to enjoy,
given us all things to enjoy for our enjoyment. Yeah. So
that's right.
Yeah, and by the way, you're right. We are rich. So when God's word is addressing rich people, that is us. We don't feel that way when we're at the lower to mid to lower end of that spectrum. We don't feel rich, but if someday in eternity, if God's got 2 lines, I want the rich people in this line, that's where we're all going. If you're in the United States in this season of human history, you're getting put in that line when compared to the rest of world history. So we're kind of working this in the wrong way though, Les, because we're telling them to turn up their financial thermostat and you're telling them they're already rich. So that sounds to me like I don't need to do any mindset work because Les just told me I'm rich.
That's the point though. Just turn it up. It's just stuff. Get out of your own head, because the reason we don't turn it up is we've got it set at a certain place where we feel comfortable, because we think that we can be content in this. But anymore, I don't know about that. I don't know about needing or wanting anymore. I want to be content, with what I have. And it's okay to be content, but still strive for more. And that verse, by the way, is 1 Timothy 6:17. So there we go. We found it.
I was going to say that,
but it was there.
I wanted to let you have the thunder, so I didn't want to take it from you. So
we knew it was there.
Les knows his Bible, everybody. So.
Yeah, but that's the whole point. There is no right degree on your financial thermostat. It's just a matter of what kinds of financial tools are going to allow you to achieve what you believe God wants you to achieve.
Okay, well, let me push you on this one then, Les. How do people get their financial thermostat set so low? I mean, I kind of set it up at the beginning of this saying we come into ministry just accepting the fact that, I hear this all the time. I left the business world, I left the corporate world to go into pastoring. My salary got cut in, in half or in, 3/4 of what it was. And we just accept that. So how does our thermostat get set so low initially? Yeah. Like, what is it about that?
I think there's a lot of layers to it in a nonprofit, especially such as a church, when there are so many needs. A pastor's heart, I'm just talking about from a pastor's perspective, a pastor's heart, it's like you feel about all those ministries and those ministry needs in the same way a dad does his kids. Mm-hmm. There aren't any favorites. You love them all. And so you want to provide for them all equally, hopefully. And in a church setting, the older a church becomes, churches have a tendency to add programs and add ministries, but never, take them away or just let them die a slow death if they need to. That's a different subject for a different podcast, probably. Right. But because of that, those resources just get spread so thin, and there is a finite number of them. We're not going to spend what we don't take in. And I think because of that, look, pastors are people in ministry generally are giving people. They want to serve. They want to minister to others. They want to be generous. And so it's like the dad, if there's if you can afford one pair of shoes and your child needs some and you need some, you're going to buy the child a pair of shoes. That's just the way dads are.
Mm-hmm.
So a pastor sometimes can get to that place with good intentions. But anyway, that's one of the reasons they end up where they do, I believe.
Yeah, it's just the limitation. I mean, you're up against very real limitation. And then I think too, you're right when you said there's a lot of layers to it. We won't get to all of them, but there's the expectation of others. We've talked about that a lot on this show, and certainly in our roadmap to freedom in our module on mindset, we uncover some of those things, like that the expectations that other people have, that we're just not okay with our pastor doing well financially, especially if it's coming from church funds, but we have a mental construct in our mind that works to see a pastor struggling. And I don't think it's because people are ill will or, have bad intentions toward their pastor. I just think it's what we've accepted for really a long period of time. We haven't really questioned the thinking behind it, which is why we are challenging that mindset. Time to turn up the financial thermostat and just expect more. Not in a way where we are not content, but I can be content. This is not a dichotomy that cancels each other out, right? Like I can be content and still reach for more. I can be content and still set some goals and some plans to get to a better place. And both can be true at the same time.
Well, and I know that we have one more to cover. Just to take a little bit of a time out, let's go ahead and admit, Jon, that we can talk a good game now, but we haven't always had that mindset either. So, right. And we get it. Wherever you are, whatever thoughts that you have, we can pretty much identify with it, which is another reason that when it came down to us providing the content for our membership, for that pastor's roadmap to financial freedom, we both agreed that this had to be a really strong component. And that's the first letter, M, and the MAPS, the M is mindset. And that's why. And we realized that on a, 30-minute or 45-minute podcast, we're not going to just absolutely, change somebody's mindset, just like ours wasn't changed overnight. What we do want to help people to understand is that there is a path. There are some things to do, some disciplines to do, some habits that can help you get there. And so we're offering that. We'll talk about this in a few minutes, but we're offering that as a part of our membership, and it's a central part. And a lot of other people that are all across the spectrum are in that membership. And that's one of the values of it, is that we can speak into one another and spur each other on in this area in particular.
Love it. Well, that's a good setup that leads to our third mindset, that we are saying a pastor needs to embrace a shift in their thinking if they want to win financially and kind of break out of the rut that they've been in. And that's simply this: I need to do something different in order to get different results. If I want to get something that I've not been getting up to this point, it's probably not going to happen if I keep doing the exact same thing I've been doing. And so I know that's really simple when you hear me say it out loud, but we have to take action and do something new, do something different. I think, Les, if there has ever been a time for pastors to really change their thinking on this, well, let me back up and say this. For way too long, the church has really embraced status quo. Like, that has been something that the church as a whole has valued. Don't change things. Keep things the same. People are drawn to that because, well, this crazy culture shifts around us, and my church doesn't change. They haven't changed the carpet in 30 years. The paneling's still the same, as it was when I was a kid. Like, that old lady's still teaching Sunday school. That was my Sunday. Like, nothing changes. And we value that. And I kind of understand, the sentiment there, but that can become a big issue. And if there's ever been a time where pastors really need to be thinking about doing some things different than what they've been doing, it is now, because I believe that the future of the church is going to look very different than the past. The culture is changing at just such a rapid pace. And I don't say that in a fear-mongering sort of way. I'm excited about it. I'm excited about the opportunities that are coming. The best days of the church are still in front of her. I'm firmly believe that the church is in great hands. But this is the time for pastors to start thinking, I need to do something different than the stuff I've been doing that has gotten me to where I am today. You got to change your thinking. So what say you to that, Les?
I'm smiling because here's what's interesting about that. Most pastors, if they're leaders, if they're visionaries, and many pastors are, that's why they're there. That's why God called them there. You're trying to take people to a place that they haven't been before ministry wise. And but they need to go there, and maybe they do too, but you got to just sort of lead them.
Yep.
And most of the people that are listening to this podcast, I promise you, they've stood on a stage and they've said something very close to that statement. If we're going to get different results, then we got to do something different, but they're talking about reaching the community and reaching people around them with the gospel. But that same principle is true with regard to our personal finances, income, revenue streams, being in the marketplace, all of that. That statement is just as true. So if it's good for us if it's valid for us to stand up on a stage and say, hey, people, if we just keep doing the same old things, we're going to get the same results. Yep. So listen to your own advice, because it's absolutely true.
Time to start smoking what you're selling, Pastor. Like if you want it in your personal life, you got to do what you've been telling the people in the pews to do for years now, and that's to take action and do something different. And so, I often say that everything you could possibly want is waiting for you on the other side of action. Like, we need to make movement. So we've been talking about thinking here, right? We've been talking about mindset in this episode, but once our thinking changes, now it's setting us up to do something in the physical. Like, now I'm going to move. I'm going to make a step, take a step, which maybe leads to a good way to end this episode, Les. I just want to, I know we highlighted it all last episode, and without apology, we're going to spend a few weeks just bringing people's attention to this pastor's roadmap to financial freedom that you and I have really been working hard to roll out. It is our monthly membership that people can get into at $97 a month if they want to kind of do it themselves and have access to this roadmap, the 4 modules: mindset, assessment, pathways, and strategy. And then if they want to do it more with a group and in a focus setting and have it kind of done together type of a thing, we'll do it with you. We've got a cohort getting ready to launch in September of this year, 2022. We'll talk more about that in the weeks to come. But that's going to be 4 kind of in-depth weekly meetings with no more than 30 people in that cohort. And that's at an investment of $597. With that, you're going to get 3 months of membership or access to our membership beyond that. And then finally, the fast track, if you want it done for you, Les, you and I are available to sit down in a few really intense coaching sessions with an individual or even a couple. And for $14.97, put that roadmap in their hand and walk them through this stuff and really set them on the course to financial freedom. We know that this is going to be a transformational thing for many pastors. And if someone was like, okay, Jon and Les, I get it. I've been thinking, I need to think differently. I'm ready to take some action. Where would they go to jump in at any of those levels, whichever level they would choose to be involved with us at?
It's very easy to find. If you'll just go to EntrePastors.com, that'll take you to our website that's got everything that Jon just mentioned. There's a short video on there if you'd like to watch it that just explains it. And then it's very easy. You go down the page, you look at whichever option best fits your personal goals, and then you choose one. And it's just as simple as that, and that'll get you started.
That's awesome. Well, we would invite you to go check that out and jump in at any level that feels right for you, wherever you feel like we could be the most helpful to you. And we'd love to see you there. So, Les, man, as always, I've had a lot of fun hanging out and spending some time in the studio with you this evening as we're recording.
Ditto. Ditto.
Stuff, bro. Well, hey, if you are a regular listener to this podcast, or even if this is your very first time, we just want to say thank you. We're grateful for each and every one of you that are out there on the other side of this microphone. One small favor you could do, if you find this content helpful and a blessing in your life, simply share it with people in your life. Put it out there, whether that's through social media or tagging somebody and saying, hey, listen to these guys. They've got something, a message worth sharing. However you want to do it, we would be so grateful for you putting that out there and sharing it with the rest of the world. So thank you for being with us. Les, you got anything else you want to add before we sign off?
Man, no, just have a good evening. We got several things lined up for tomorrow. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a great day.
I got two more things, Les. Are you ready? You got a minute still? Okay.
Yeah.
So first of all, you and I are going backstage. We're going to share one more bonus mindset shift. So stick around if you're part of our premium subscribers, or if you're in our membership already, we'll be with you backstage in just a moment. But Les, last question. This is going way back in the episode. You were talking about drinking milk before bed. Do you actually do that? Do you drink a glass of milk?
No question.
Bed?
Yeah, of course.
You do?
Doesn't everybody?
I have never drank. Do you warm it up?
Oh, no. Colder the better.
Why? Why do people drink milk before bed, Les?
I don't know. I just like it. I like milk.
I like
it's
milk.
a good way to end the day.
At bedtime, it gets all.
It's a great way. Yeah, preferably. I mean, maybe even a Pop-Tart to go with it.
You think you know a guy. So, all right, Les, it's been fun. I'll see you backstage. I'll have the milk ice cold for you. See you soon.
All right.
Well, hey, thanks for watching this episode of the EntrePastors podcast. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you can be notified every time we release a new episode. If you'd like to get connected to other pastors who are learning to think, act, and thrive as prosperous entrepreneurs, then we invite you to check us out on Facebook. Just search for the EntrePastors Connect group, answer a few of our simple questions there, and we'd love to include you in the conversations. And if you're really ready to go to the next level, then we invite you to join our EntrePastors membership community. When you become a monthly subscriber, you will receive access to courses, exclusive community, and coaching that will help you along in your own EntrePastors journey. If there's anything else we can do to serve you, please visit us at EntrePastors.com, and we will do our best to serve you there. God bless everybody. See you soon.